Ever since I was a kid playing carnivores in the 90s, I found environments with a low fidelity but a high level of detail extremely compelling. The plants in this game are just made out of a handful of polygons with PNGs slapped on them. However, there are so many plants and so many different types of plants that it makes for a surprisingly decent representation of a real forest. In Hollowlands, I'm aiming to capture that feeling using a feature that was just added to the GzDoom engine. Visual thinkers were added on November 17th and allow you to display sprites without the overhead of creating an actor or the limitations of using a particle. I'm using visual thinkers to create thousands of individual pieces of grass that are distributed across the entire game world. The problem was that not only was I too lazy to place the grass by hand, I don't think that the game engine could handle hundreds of thousands of new objects, even if they did require less resources than an actor. My solution was to implement a Poisson disk sampling algorithm that could randomly generate the level's foliage. In a Poisson disk, items are placed randomly around an environment, but with the limitation that items must be at least a certain distance away. The area around the player is split up into cells on a grid. A random point is selected within a cell on the grid to drop down the grass. But before the item can be placed, it needs to look at all of the cells around it to make sure it's at least the minimum distance away from other objects. As the player moves, grass points that can't fit onto the grid anymore are deleted from the game's memory. Both the size of the grid and the distance between objects is configurable from the options menu. Smaller distances and larger grids will use much more of your RAM and GPU. In a configuration file, each floor texture is assigned a list of grass sprites that can randomly spawn. The forest grass has a dark green color, while the bayou grass is taller and more saturated. I've also created new textures that act as transitions between the floors with grass and the floors without grass. The end result is a radical transformation of the world that brings new levels of immersion and new gameplay challenges. Now there are even more places where monsters and dangerous animals can hide.